We shall now move on to our final panelist, Yang Bahagia Professor Dr. Muhammad Shukri bin Saleh from the Center for Islamic Development Management Studies, University of Science Malaysia. Not Yang Bahagia Professor Dr. Shukri, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sheikh Saifuddin. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajma'in wa la haula wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Yang amat berbahagia Tun Ahmad Sarji Abdul Hamid, Chairman of IKIM. Yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Azizan binti Baharudin, Director General of IKIM, distinguished panel of speakers, brothers and sisters. Let me start by expressing that Maqasidic Sharia is applicable in forming the Khaira Ummah at all times, whether during peaceful and harmonious times or during the times of disruptions and crises, inshallah. Secondly, I would like to express that the use of Maqasidic Sharia as the framework in forming the Khaira Ummah is very much commendable. There are two reasons for this. Number one, firstly, Khaira Ummah is Islamically based. Its framework, therefore, too, must be Islamic. And for this, the Maqasidic Sharia has been accepted by many scholars as Islamic. Secondly, endeavors in forming the Khaira Ummah should not reiterate the experience of other efforts in establishing Islam. Many Islamic efforts, unfortunately, have been trapped in un-Islamic framework. For example, the products of Islamic banks are Islamic, but the institutional management is still in the form of Western quality-based management. Islamic economics is supposed to be Islamic, but its assumptions and concepts are still intimately attached with neoclassical economics, ending eventually with what we can call fake-based neoclassical economics rather than a pure Islamic economics. Zakat and Waqaf are also Islamic, but their operational mechanisms are more of a conventional commercialization motivated, and in some cases even used to fulfill the Western ethnocentric development framework, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, without redefining the concept embedded in the SDGs according to Islam. As such, the efforts to develop the Khaira Ummah, an Islamically instructed deed within an Islamic framework of Maqasid Sharia, is therefore not only applicable and commendable, but also timely. Moreover, during the times of disruptions and crises. Relatively, the right framework is much more needed during the times of disruptions and crises than during the times of harmony and peaceful. The Islamic framework does not only provide a right diagnosis and prescriptions of any problems, but also comes with full of barakah and other divine aids, inshallah. We are indeed thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Malaysia has actually attempted quite a number of initiatives, all of which conscious or unconsciously, direct or indirectly, could be said to have consisted the essential elements of the Khaira Ummah. There is bid what is right and forbid what is wrong, and had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also in preserving religion, life, mind, progeny, and property of the Ummah. We observe, for instance, the initiative such as the penerapan nilai-nilai murni or inculcation of good values during Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, Islam Hadari, civilizational Islam, during Tun Ahmad Abdullah Badawi. Index Syariah Islam, Index Syariah Malaysia, or Malaysian Syariah Index during Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Tun Abdul Razak. Rahmatan lil Alamin during again Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. And now the Manhaj Rabbani during the present Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. Even at state level, we witnessed wawasan syihad in Terengganu during the late Tan Sri Wan Mokhtar Ahmad. And later on Islam Hadari Terengganu Bestari during Datuk Sri Idris Yusof. Membangun bersama Islam in Kelantan during Tuan Guru Datuk Ni Abdul Aziz Nikmat till now. And at present, even in Pulau Pinang, Majlis Agama Islam Negeri Pulau Pinang has actually is endeavoring for the formation of Khaira Ummah. However, if we were to look at the adequacy in preserving religion, life, mind, progeny, and property, as highlighted by our previous speakers, then the answer is unfortunately insufficient, unfortunately inadequate, and therefore need to be revisited and improved. They relate to at least three main things. There is their framework, firstly, their coverage, secondly, and their sustainability. And the reasons are as follows. Firstly, a distinctive Islamic framework is much more to be desired. It was only lately, in particularly beginning from the initiative on Index Syariah Malaysia, followed by Rahmatan lil Alamin and Manhaj Rabbani, that Maqasidic al-Syariah seems to be treated as the core, or direct or indirectly as the framework of the initiative. Other initiatives prior to this did not seem to emphasize on the framework of the initiative. However, the present discourse on the adoptions of the Maqasidic framework, and in our case for the formation of Khaira Ummah, has yet to have a definitive stop. There seems to be scholars who began to put forward further opinions beyond the Maqasid al-Syariah itself. For instance, there is an opinion among the scholars that Maqasid al-Syariah is insufficient. What Malaysia is doing, particularly during the rule of Pakatan Harapan, was argued as much concentrated on overly legalistic modes, and it is epistemologically undetached from the Sharia-centric paradigm that has dominated the post-colonial intellectual makeup. He termed the Sharia-centric Islamist bias prior to the Pakatan Harapan rule, particularly during the administration of the Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Abdul Razak's administration, as Shari'ization. And in fact, the scholar is in favor of another Maqasid. He called Maqasid Akhlaq, of course, as an addition to the Maqasid al-Syariah. Apart from the Maqasid al-Syariah and Maqasid Akhlaq, there is also another opinion that highlights the necessity of Maqasid al-Quran. So all these opinions open further and deeper horizons of discourse, which in our attempt to adopt an accurate and right framework for the formations of the Khaira Ummah could not afford to ignore. Even if it is already convinced, hence confirmed, that Maqasid al-Syariah is the only accurate and right framework, we still need to address these other opinions academically and convincingly, so as to allow a solid trust among the Malaysians in general and the target groups in particular on what Malaysia is actually attempting to. Secondly, in regards to the coverage, we observe that the coverage of this initiative is still incomprehensive. The target groups were only partially covered. Penerapan nilai-nilai murni, for instance, was only confined to government administration. Index Syariah Malaysia was only confined to the measurement of the government status in carrying out the nation's administrations. Rahmatan lil Alamin was only confined to the administration of Islam. And the present Manhaj Rabbani is only confined to the Islamic administration of agencies under the Prime Minister's Department Religious Affairs only. The only initiative that could be regarded as quite a comprehensive initiative was only the Islam Hadari. It was the sole comprehensive Islamic-based development strategy so far that covers almost all aspects, from faith and piety in Allah to just and trustworthy government, freedom and independence to the people, mastery of knowledge, balance and comprehensive economic development, good quality of life for all, protections of the rights of minority groups and women, cultural and moral integrity, protections of the environment, and a strong defense policy. However, unfortunately, it was not live long. It ended with the end of Tun Ahmad Abdullah Badawi premiership. Now, to my opinion, as Islam Hadari is the most comprehensive initiative of all, it would be great effort if Islam Hadari could be revisited and revived. It could become the core initiative in the formations of the Khaira Ummah, injecting into it the strengths and dynamics of other previous and later initiatives. One may wonder whether this is politically visible, but to me, I think there is no harm trying. And thirdly, in regard to the sustainability, and I think this is the most important of all, we observe that the past experience have exhibited that the sustainability of all initiatives were unstable and to some extent, in fact, insecure. They were short-lived. The survival duration relates very much to the rise and fall of political figures that advocated them, irrespective whether they are in the same government or moreover in different government. Now, actually, we are witnessing curiously and in fact waiting in anxiety what will happen to the manhaj Rabbani of the present government. If there is a change in the leadership of the department responsible for it, or a change in the upper leadership in the same government, or moreover a change of the whole government itself. Based on these previous experiences, a serious search for an effective formation or effective formulation of what we could regard as a political proof initiative, need to be explored urgently. Among the main things to be considered are firstly, the locations that houses the initiative. And secondly, the nature of the socio-economic and political system within or without which the initiative is going to be operated. The formal formations of the Khaira Ummah falls in the realm of development. So could it be housed in any appropriate national development agencies, such as the Economic Planning Unit, EPU, or the Implementation and Coordination Unit, ICU, rather than the religious agency like Jabatan Kemajuan Islam Malaysia, JAKIM? Or alternatively, could it be directly housed under Majlis Raja-Raja? Placing Manhaj Rabbani and the like in the EPU and ICU would mean an integration of the development of the Khaira Ummah into National Development Plan, especially into the 5-year Malaysia plan, hence relatively the sustainability. While alternatively, housing it under Majlis Raja-Raja would mean granted sustainability, as it will not be affected by any political changes as long as the Raja Perlembagaan remains, insyaAllah. However, even if it is housed under Majlis Raja-Raja, identification of an effective agency to be responsible for the plan, execution, and translations of the initiative into practical reality is still a necessity. Moreover, as previous experiences prove the limitation and hardship that JAKIM faced in many ways in handling such a crucial, heavy, and tough task. As for the system, we must think of workable ways of how to initiate ataupun how the initiative could be practically operationalized within the dominant dual socioeconomic and political systems. On one hand, there is a non-Islamic, and the other hand, Islamic that is prevalent in Malaysia at the moment. Or is it possible to implement the initiative side by side or from without the dominant systems? Apart from all the above, we'll also need to formulate indicators, sub-indicators of the accomplishments of each principle of Maqasid Sharia. Actually, Malaysia has already started the attempt the formulations of the indicators and sub-indicators in respect of the applicability of each principle of Maqasid Sharia. It began during the premiership of Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib. There was an introduction of Index Sharia in Malaysia, but unfortunately was disappeared along the fall of Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib, as had been experienced by other previous and later initiatives. There is no question of the need to formulate the indicators, sub-indicators of all 5 rights entrenched in Maqasid Sharia. In fact, it is necessary indeed. And the present Mahashram Bani, Alhamdulillah, has already developed an application called IMAC-SD to measure the 5 principles of the Maqasid Sharia. Though now it is only confined to measure the Islamic administration functions of agencies under the Prime Minister's Department, Religious Affairs alone. And we hope that, inshallah, as time goes, the present political power remains, the authority will widen the application beyond Islamic administrations of the religious affairs per se, inshallah. But one important that IMAC-SD needs to relook into seriously is the integrations of the IMAC-SD with the 17 agendas of the 2030 SDGs. I think each of these 17 agendas need to be revisited and redefined according to Islam. That's all I can say. Thank you very much. Wallahu alam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.